Cancer Council in New South Wales acknowledges the traditional custodians, both past and present, of the lands on which we live and work. Welcome to you all. My name is Jill Mills, and tonight we will be talking about how will I manage financially at the end of cancer treatment. So if you have any technical problems, you'll see in the chat box there's a 1800 733 416 number that you can call, and the tech team will help you and support you with any problems that you might be facing. So we encourage you to use the chat box tonight, talk to each other. If you have any extra questions you'd like to ask, hopefully at the end of the webinar we may be able to address them, or during the webinar we may be able to. So we can't really provide any specific financial advice tonight. It will be general advice. If you do have anything specific, we'll be talking tonight about where you can go to get that advice. So the webinar is being recorded. If you get a bit distracted by the chat box, if it gets a bit busy, don't worry. We do send you a recording in an email to you after, and a list of resources of different things we've talked about. So if at any stage you feel you need to speak to someone urgently, don't hesitate to contact a Lifeline counsellor on 13 11 14, which is available 24/7. So let's get started. We'd first like to introduce the panel and thank them all for coming along tonight. So next to me is Lynn and Sue and Kim. So welcome to you all.
Thank you very much.
So we'll get started. I'm going to click through the slides for Lynn. Lynn's a financial counsellor that works at Cancer Council in New South Wales. So welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. So hello everyone. I would like to begin with a case study where the client received financial support and financial counselling. So Jana is 48 years old and she was diagnosed with advanced bowel cancer, which has spread to her liver. She lives in a metropolitan area and has 2 children. Jana became unemployed when she was diagnosed almost a year ago. So this is Jana's story. I lost my job. I was in hospital for 55 days and bedridden, and you know the bills don't stop. They just keep coming. My whole life turned around 360 degrees overnight, from working full-time and having a good income to being on a disability. I have never been on a disability pension in my life, so it was a bit of a shock having a decreased income. So my main worries were my finances. How would I be able to pay for things now that I don't have the high income I used to get when I was working? Banks don't understand when you fall sick and things change. My life changed overnight. You know, I was really disgusted with how the banks, treated my situation. They weren't even sympathetic about my case. You know, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer overnight, and I've had this credit card for 10 years. But when I fell sick, I was unable to pay for it, and they didn't want to hear it. The bank quickly transferred my files to a debt collector's within a month while I was in hospital. When I came out, I found letters and email and stuff. I was really worried that they wanted to proceed with legal action, and in my condition at the time, I wasn't prepared and I was in no condition for any legal action to be taken against me. I was sick. I got really, really sick. And all up for the last 11 months, I've been treated in and out of hospitals. So having someone chasing me for an unpaid debt was the last thing I needed. And that's when I freaked out and I got onto the Cancer Council. The financial counsellor is in touch with the debt collector and she has been dealing with them. I gave her my full authority for my stuff to deal with them, so she is handling the matter. The financial counsellor got the bank to agree to hold my debt for a year without any interest, just to see how I go. So having to know that in a year's time, depending on where I will be or what my situation will be at that time, we will deal with it. But knowing that the financial counsellor is taking care of it and that I don't have to deal with it means a lot. Like a great relief, because now I can focus on my health. So not having to worry about anyone chasing me or anything is a pretty good outcome right now. It is the last thing on my mind that I wanted to worry about. The fact that I know that you guys are a phone call away and that I can rely on the financial counsellor if anything goes wrong. Just knowing there is help out there, just knowing you are not alone. It is a peace of mind right now, knowing it has been taken care of. I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for everything, and thank you for your support and the financial counselling service. It has been great. Next slide. I always find this a very moving story, which has caused a great deal of stress. Financial stress is reported by 1/3 of people with cancer and around 1/4 of carers. And this report came from the CCA report, Cost of Cancer to the Patients in July 2017. An evaluation of the Financial Assistance Program and Emergency Financial Assistance Program conducted in 2016 and 17 found that those who had accessed the service felt less stressed and better able to cope with their financial situation once they understood what assistance was available. The Financial Assistance Program provided information, support and financial assistance to 2,750 people affected by cancer and experienced acute financial hardship. As part of this, our Emergency Financial Assistance Service provided $5,807 worth of aid to 2,238 people across New South Wales to help with household expenses and the cost of getting to treatment. Next slide. So financial counselling is a service, a free community service provided by financial counsellors working in a non-profit organisation that assists consumers who are experiencing financial problems. Financial counsellors work closely with the community organisations and have a highly developed referral network. At the Cancer Council, there are 3 financial counsellors. We have one at the Central Coast area that covers Gosford Hospital and John Hunter in Newcastle area, while another 2 are at the City office and one includes myself. We cover the following hospitals on a need-to-need basis for financial counselling face-to-face. So it's the Royal North Shore, St Vincent's, St George, Westmead, and myself, I cover Concord, Chris O'Brien and Randwick. However, to reach a broader area of clients, we also provide telephone financial counselling to those clients who are unable to attend a face-to-face session. To me, financial counselling is a unique role, and it's a combination of a variety of aspects, from counselling to providing financial rights, to advocacy and negotiations, and sometimes just thinking outside the box. Financial counsellors are not planners or advisors. We see clients in financial hardship who are unable to meet their financial obligations, such as credit cards, personal loans, mortgage, and other things. This is due usually to a change of circumstances in life, which could be ill health, relationship breakdown, the loss of job, being made redundant, and just a loss of income. Financial counsellors affirm the rights and dignity of the individuals by informing and educating their rights and responsibility while using credit card and other marketplace services and empowering the consumer through this knowledge. The financial counsellor will assess your financial situation, preparing a statement of financial position, or in other words, a budget or a money plan, and conduct a full assessment of the financial situation, including assets and liabilities. Financial counsellors act as your advocate and negotiate, or can negotiate, on your behalf with the creditors and debt collection agencies and other facilities. They will assist in organising different repayments. For example, we can offer a moratorium, which is a 3 to 6 month no repayments period with no interest, fees or charges. We can also look at long-term or short-term payment arrangement plans. We can ask for debt waivers under medical hardship grounds. We can do full and final settlements, and that's where a debt might be $10,000 but could be reduced to $6,000 or $8,000 and pay out the complete debt. And the final option that we can discuss is bankruptcy. And this is one of the last options bankruptcy is one considered. The Financial Counsellor will provide comprehensive support and information and will make sure that all potential consequences of bankruptcy are well understood and that the bankruptcy forms are understood by the client, and the Financial Counsellor will support clients to lodge these applications. However, in order to prove this hardship, we must provide evidence to support these arrangements. So we would require a covering letter which offers or requests under medical grounds what we are planning to request from the credit provider. We need a statement of financial position, a budget which reflects your income and outgoing commitments, a copy of income statement, so it could be a wage slip or Centrelink benefits, and medical documents or supporting letters. Under a national credit code, the credit providers must provide some form of hardship assistance. So it's really important and vital that you understand your income and your income sources. Often a cancer diagnosis can change the financial situation of an individual and their family. Increased out-of-pocket expenses relating to cancer treatments, which can be medication, travelling to treatment, specialist fees, x-rays. Coupled with loss of income due to illness resulting from incapacity to work or reduced in working hours, collectively can impact individuals financially. In the given circumstances, there may be a need to manage and assess your finances. Finally, the Cancer Council Information and Support Financial Assistance Service can provide the following emergency assistance. So we can offer a one-off payment grant of $350. This can go towards household bills such as electricity and gas. If that isn't available, we do have Coles food vouchers, BP fuel and taxi vouchers. There is an assessment form which is used by the social workers within the hospitals. Currently, we are providing a home help pilot scheme which provides an additional $350 towards domestic assistance, such as cleaning or household maintenance of lawn maintenance and gardening. In addition to this, we have partnershiped with Telstra and can offer another additional $250 towards any Telstra bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. That was very informative, and I hope everyone got sort of understood all that information. And you can always watch the webinar later if you want to sort of understand a bit deeper of what's been said. And yeah, and certainly you can call our 13 11 20 number to ask about the services we provide. So we're going to head over to Sue now. Welcome, Sue, and thank you for coming along tonight. So Sue's a financial advisor with Hill Ross Financial Services. So I'm going to click through the slides for you. So if I'm getting slow, let me know.
I will do. Good evening, everyone. I've been working with the Cancer Council Pro Bono program for about 4 years now. It's an excellent program.
So we had a little water spillage.
Just trying to make me feel relaxed.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an excellent program that really helps us to reach out where we can to assist. So if you do happen to qualify for it, I do strongly recommend it. How can we help you? There are 5 main areas where we generally see people seeking advice going through such a difficult time. As my colleague touched on, preparing a budget, talking to Centrelink for you, helping you to manage your debt, accessing superannuation and insurance in relevant circumstances, and also planning your estate. So I'll just go through those in a little bit more detail for you. Go to the next slide, thank you. So first of all, preparing a budget. When we look at our expenses, many of us have obviously essential expenses, and then there are many that we could put in the discretionary basket. And just by writing those down and actually looking at what needs to be attended to right now and what can be deferred, it's it sometimes gives you better clarity, and then at the same time looking at those income sources and really seeing if we can get some form of equality between the two. Next slide, thank you. So first of all, income sources. Obviously, if you're unable to work, there are various Centrelink benefits that you may be entitled to. Centrelink is a very complicated area, and again, if you can obtain support either from a financial advisor or counsellor, or even a financial information service officer from Centrelink, that will help. The disability support pension is a pension really for people that are never going to be able to work again. As such, it is a difficult pension to qualify for. You will need a medical specialist to acknowledge that you're unlikely to ever be able to work again. Sickness allowance is one that is obtainable if you can't work for a while, and a bit like income protection insurance. So that one may be an option. And similarly, New Start allowance, if you aren't able to work for a while and you can't obtain sickness allowance, New Start may be a possibility. And for those that are looking after you, a carer payment, carer allowance. Carer payment is if your carer is unable to work. Again, you have to meet the same criteria as age pension or disability support pension. So the assets and income tests come into play with Centrelink on that one. The carer allowance is not means tested, but you do need to actually qualify from the caring perspective. It's not just a sort of part-time care. So again, very important to have those conversations. In the very sad circumstances of bereavement, there are various Centrelink payments that are made under those circumstances. And finally, if you can access, obviously, some form of Centrelink and you can obtain the healthcare card, can be extremely beneficial. So all really can be extremely beneficial. So all really important, and it is a complicated area, particularly now. Centrelink have really moved to online only. So if you can get assistance, either, as I said, through the pro bono program or through financial counselling, it's certainly worthwhile.
Yeah, and I just note Irene was saying Centrelink are a nightmare to deal with, but a financial counsellor or someone would actually help with that.
Absolutely, and indeed financial advisors through the program. I've assisted with Centrelink several times. You can actually...
So it kind of eases a little bit of that frustration that people might face with dealing with Centrelink.
I think Centrelink is difficult when you're well. And if you're unwell,
that's right.
It's a pretty demoralising experience.
That's another good...
So just some tips with Centrelink. As I said, there is the Financial Information Services Officer that's available either as a phone appointment or a face-to-face appointment. Now, they are really excellent if you can get in to see them, because they will take you on a case-by-case basis. They're a little bit like your financial advisor that works with Centrelink. They're not giving you financial advice, but they are able to really identify what you're going to be able to obtain at Centrelink. Another thing to be aware of with some of the benefits, for example, sickness allowance and New Start, they do have what is called a liquid assets waiting period. And if you have over $5,500 of funds that are easily accessible, then you start to build up a waiting period before you can obtain that benefit. So, and that can go up to 13 weeks, which obviously you don't really want to have to go through if you can. So something to be aware of with that is if you do have credit card debt and you pay that off, then Centrelink will not look at that as a deprived asset. They won't actually calculate that and penalise you with the waiting period. So if you can't pay the mortgage ahead, but if you have any credit card debts, then it's worth considering using those liquid assets to settle those. With your debts, obviously it is a huge headache, and as we've touched on before, You do have a legal right to apply for hardship variation if you have a loan for a personal purpose. If it's before 2013, there are certain criteria on the amount, but it has to be within 500,000. Any loans since 2013, there isn't a limit on it. Now, often they will allow 6 to 12 months of no interest payments and no fees, and that's obviously extremely relevant at that time. So with your credit card debt, hardship variation is certainly worthwhile. Again, if you can talk to a financial advisor through the program or a financial counsellor, these are all areas that we can assist with. Very important, if you do get an official court document, that you do seek legal advice immediately. And that is also something that's offered through the Cancer Council pro bono program. Consolidating your debt is one way to certainly simplify everything at a stressful time. You can reduce the overall payments and you may reduce the overall interest rate and the term of your loan. Now that again is very important you get professional advice before consolidating or refinancing, because unfortunately there are some very dubious lenders out there. Again, through the program, through the financial counsellor, that's certainly what we're here for. Superannuation, almost 18 billion as at the 30th of June 2017, and it's almost certainly higher now. The easiest way to obtain your lost super is through the MyGov website, but it is so important that if you go to, say, your super fund and they offer to consolidate your insurance for you, you must either get them to check yourself. If you've got access to a program, get someone to check, or even ring the fund yourself with regard to insurance. Because if you do roll over superannuation and you lose that insurance, it's going to be very difficult to get it back again. And it may be insurance that you can claim under. So really important to seek advice around that, and certainly that's what we're here for. With superannuation, you're only allowed to access it under certain circumstances before you reach your retirement age. One of those is severe financial hardship, and to do that you need to have been receiving a Centrelink benefit for 26 weeks and not be able to meet your living expenses, and you can claim between $1,000 and $10,000 under that financial hardship claim in any 12-month period. And then if you continue to meet the criteria after that, you can claim in the following year. There's also the ability to claim under compassionate grounds, whether it be for unpaid medical bills or unpaid medical transport. If the bank's threatening to foreclose on you, then you can make a claim. If you need to modify your home due to disability and for burial and palliative care. If you are terminally ill, then you can access your super if you have less than 24 months to live. You do need a doctor and a specialist to report on that one. Again, if you can come through the program, we can do all of that for you. The same thing with permanent incapacity. If you're never able to work again in any occupation, then you can also claim on you to withdraw your super. And if you happen to have a fund with less than $200, you can just obtain the funds in any case. Insurance in superannuation, there are 3 types. Firstly, income protection, sometimes called salary continuance. That's there to provide you with continuing income whilst you can't work, up to 85% of your normal income in the 12 months prior to you needing to make a claim. Now, usually there is a waiting period on that, maybe 30, 60, 90 days, can even be up to a 2-year waiting period, just depending on the type of cover you have. And the benefit period can be anything from 2 years up to age 70, depending on the insurance. So that one, if it does pay you, will be taxed at your normal tax rate, just for your guide. With total and permanent disability, it is the hardest insurance to claim under because it really is that you're never going to be able to work again. That one will be taxed at, it's a complicated formula. The longer you have left of your working life, effectively, the higher the tax payable on it. But it's certainly, obviously, very relevant if you're never able to work again. It's often linked to life cover. So if, in the very unfortunate circumstances you are terminally ill, it would be better to claim under terminal illness rather than total and permanent disability, because under terminal illness you won't pay any tax on the benefit payment. I should just mention also there is, of course, trauma insurance that's outside superannuation. So that one you will be aware if you have, because it won't be a default cover that may be in the superannuation. With trauma insurance, that normally covers any one of 43 different trauma events, so including many cancers. So if you do have trauma insurance, obviously it would be worth considering that policy. And if you, as I said, do qualify for the program, we will handle any of those claims for you. Something to be aware of with regard to your superannuation. If you're under age pension age and your super is held in super, it's not assessable. So what that means is it's not considered under the incomes or assets test. If you do take the funds out of super, then they will be accessible by Centrelink. So it may be that if you're on a benefit, you lose those funds. You could consider taking an incidental payment from your super in those circumstances if you meet a condition of release. If the super is withdrawn, it's also available to creditors, so be very aware of that if you are considering bankruptcy. The other thing to just consider is that some insurers have what's called offset clauses. So if you have other income, for example, from your superannuation, they may reduce the insurance payments that they make. Another thing, the transition to retirement income stream. What that is, a non-commutable, which means you can't take the whole thing out. So it allows you to take between 4 to 10% of your money each year once you've reached what's called preservation age. Preservation age is anything between 55 and 60, depending on your date of birth. It's moving out to age 60 at the moment. So some people can access their funds from 55 and others not until they're 60. If you do take funds before you're age 60, you will be taxed on the income with a 15% offset for tax that's been paid in the fund already. If you're over 60, then any payments you receive are tax-free. Death benefit nominations, very important. They cover your proceeds of your super and any insurance proceeds. If you make a binding nomination, that means that the trustee is pretty much compelled to pay the funds to your nominated beneficiary. You can have a lapsing or non-lapsing. Lapsing means that it will run out after 3 years and you renew it. Non-lapsing means it doesn't run out. Superannuation has to be paid to a super dependent. That's either a spouse or a child of any age or another financially dependent or interdependent person. If it's not one of those people that you wish to leave your money to, you leave it by your legal personal representative in your estate. If you leave a non-binding nomination on your super, it does mean the trustee will look to pay the money to your preferred beneficiary, but somebody else may make claim on it and it may not end up going where you want it to go. It also usually takes a bit longer. And finally, a reversionary beneficiary, that can only be put on an income stream or pension, and you can only nominate either a spouse or sometimes a child. Some funds will only allow a spouse to be nominated. Tax is always a consideration. Within super, certain payments are non-taxable. I think, as we mentioned before, if you do access your super because of terminal grounds, then there's no tax payable. If you're super is left to a tax dependent, which is either a spouse or a child under 18. Tax dependent and super dependent are two different things. So a tax dependent, there is no tax payable. And if death benefits are paid as a pension or income stream, where the deceased member or the beneficiary are over age 60, then there's no tax payable. And if life insurance is accessed early on terminal illness, it won't be taxed. Any super that's accessed after you turn 60 is not taxable. Most people have taxable components in their fund. That really means if you've had employer contributions, when the funds have gone in, they're taxed at 15%. So they're what's considered to be taxable components. So any super that's accessed early, if it's not for terminal illness, will be taxed. If your death benefits are paid to a non-tax dependent, as I touched on before, that's also taxable. And any death benefits that are paid out as an income stream where the deceased member and the beneficiary are under 60, that's also taxable. And as we mentioned before, income protection is taxable, and also total and permanent disability payments. So there are ways to minimise the tax that's payable within super. It's essential that if you are giving any consideration to this, you either talk to a financial advisor through the pro bono program, or probably a financial advisor outside otherwise. There is something called a cash out and recontribution strategy, and that actually reduces the taxable component in the fund, which makes a considerable difference to beneficiaries. But it is something we need to consider, your ability to contribute into super and to withdraw the funds tax-free. So I strongly recommend that anything like that, you consult with an advisor. Thank you.
Thanks. So I just realised we're on Kim's slide now. Now, do you want me to pass you the mouse?
You can do it.
You want me to do it? Okay, I'll do the slides. So thank you so much, Sue. That was obviously why you need an advisor, because it's all very complicated. You know, I'm listening to all that and thinking, oh, I know that, but I didn't know about that. And there's a lot of information to take in, but that's really informative.
Unfortunately, they change it all the time as well.
I'm sure.
Don't they?
Yeah.
So it makes it very difficult for people.
Yeah.
It really does. But as I said, I think the program that you run is excellent, and I know that people involved in it, we're very happy to help if we can. Yeah,
thank you very much. And now we'll pass over to Kim. So Kim, she's a specialist oncology social worker, is that right? Mm-hmm. Yep, at Westmead Hospital. So thank you, Kim, and welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to come along again, and I'm really glad I came tonight because I've learned such a lot already, and I'll be looking forward, as Barbara and some others, to getting the link so that I can review all this information. So my job here tonight is sort of to wrap it all up and to think about, how financial problems happen in a country like Australia with cancer illness. So I thought I just picked out a few random headlines recently and from a variety of sources. So what we know is that if we get sick, lots of people risk losing their homes unless they get expert advice about how to renegotiate mortgages and so on. Falling ill can mean financial ruin, but it shouldn't in a place like Australia. How a dying cancer patient won the fight over Centrelink payments, and a new side effect of treatment called financial toxicity. Thanks, Jill. So the cost of cancer treatment, it's a bit puzzling in Australia, isn't it? Because we have access to a wonderful free universal healthcare system. Then many of us have private health insurance, and we assume that that's going to cover our private medical and hospital care. The standard's very good, but we find there are costs, and they're large and they're small, and they often come as a surprise. So it's a shock when you find that you're going to have out-of-pocket costs. It can influence the way that you make some treatment decisions. And so I've heard cancer care described as a menu without prices. That's a term I like. It's you sort of go in with some trepidation, not quite knowing what the cost is going to be at the end. So what we hear about now is a term called financial toxicity when we think about the cost of cancer treatment. what is financial toxicity. It's a new term that we're hearing to describe the unintended economic harm suffered because of cancer treatment. So through no fault of your own, you find yourself in a position where you have quite extensive expenses that you hadn't anticipated. So what happens? What are the possible consequences when you do that? You might compromise your care. You might decide that you can't afford to take a recommended treatment if the costs are high. And that leads to a situation where we have inequities in care based on capacity to pay. And that's an anathema in the Australian population because we have a free universal healthcare system and we assume all people are going to get the same care. If you don't have recommended treatments or if you can't afford to pay for some treatments, then we might have poorer cancer outcomes. You might be late in coming to a referral, or you may fail to complete your treatment and have a worse outcome. And you might have reduced quality of life. It might be that you need to ration or not use some of your pain and nausea medications because of the out-of-pocket costs of them. So some of the costs you can anticipate. We all know about pharmacy co-payments and Medicare gaps. We know that there are parking costs. It's usually one of the biggest complaints about the healthcare system generally. You might need to access community transport. You might need to have additional childcare, some modifications at home, some equipment that you need to purchase and hire. So some of that is anticipated, but you don't quite know how much it's going to be at the beginning of the cancer journey. And as Lynn said, reduction in income is significant. So if your household goes from 2 incomes to 1, if you go from full-time to part-time work, if you have a period of unpaid leave, or if you have casual pay with casual work that doesn't have paid leave at all, then you're in strife fairly quickly when your income changes dramatically like that. And those, of course, who are reliant on government benefits fare the worst. Just thinking about the basic pension at the moment in Australia is $407 per week, or $307 each for a couple. New Start and sickness allowance is as low as $269 a week for a single person. And we know that these benefits aren't keeping pace with the cost of living increases and fail to do so again in the most recent federal budget. So who suffers most? Many of us will have some costs and be worse off financially than we were at the beginning. But if you're young and therefore don't have too much in reserve, if you have a lower education and income and a lower paid job, if you're single and don't have the buffer of another income to help you, and if you're living alone, having to pay all of the expenses of living in a single person household, but not having some additional income to help you. We know that people who live in rural and remote areas have increased costs of travel, and that adds to their treatment costs. And if you have very advanced cancer and you're getting intensive and multimodality treatment, so maybe you're having chemotherapy and radiotherapy, then you're coming back for some more of something else and some surgery and some scans along the way to see how you're going, then the costs are really adding up. And we need to think too about our vulnerable populations. So people who have fewer external resources to support them. Because hopefully for a lot of us, there's someone who can help us out of a financial sticky situation. But if you're recently arrived in the country, if you're a refugee, if you're a homeless person, if you're a person with mental health problems or substance abuse problems, that doesn't stop you getting cancer. So if you add a cancer illness to an already disadvantaged section of the population, then those people run into strife very quickly. So is there a problem in Australia? I think probably everyone tuned into this webinar thinks that there's a problem. We think that we should all have equitable access to cancer treatment, irrespective of whether we can pay or not. And yet, in spite of our free health care, I was surprised to learn that the out-of-pocket healthcare costs for Australia ranks the 6th highest in OECD countries. I found that really quite surprising. We often think about the poor people in the United States who found that really quite surprising. We often think about the poor people in the United States who can't afford treatment, but I think most of us wouldn't have thought that Australia was ranked as highly as that on a scale where we didn't want to be ranked highly. Coupled with that, we've got, as we know, a growing and an ageing population, and so many health conditions, not only cancer but including cancer, are chronic. And so you have episodes of care that are extended over the course of many years, and that increases your out-of-pocket expenses. If you're solely dependent on government pensions and benefits and you don't have anything else, then there's a widening inequality gap, and that further adds to the financial toxicity and distress that people feel. So the most common problems, and these were the ones that Lynette identified as well, medication costs and lost or reduced income. So we'll just have a bit of a look at that. Medication co-payments are a major source of financial toxicity. There's a PBS safety net threshold. Some of you will know that, but it's very high. You really have to have paid a lot for your PBS prescriptions. So they're the ones that are covered on a basic standard prescription, not anything fancy that you have to pay extra for. So you've got really significant out-of-pocket expenses before you even hit your safety net. That may lead people to ration or omit medications, to use a cheaper version over-the-counter medications, or to borrow and share. Never a safe thing to do. We've heard stories of people foregoing essentials such as food. We've heard about them borrowing money from family or friends or accumulating credit card debt to pay for medications. So just think a little bit about the PBS prescription costs on a standard medication. Even if you have a healthcare card and your PBS prescription is $6.20, if your total pension for a single person, that should be $407 for a single person, $307 each for married, you might be on a couple of medications regularly, so for blood pressure or diabetes or other things, and then you start to have chemotherapy, which is a couple of different drugs, and it's some anti-nausea medication, and so your $6.20, if you're lucky enough to have a healthcare card for the number of prescriptions you're having, is a fair proportion of your pension. And then we hear, and we do almost every week now, don't we, about wonder drugs, things that are going to offer support and prospect of even cure. We hear it on the news all the time. And sometimes there's a promising drug, but we can't get it on the PBS scheme for some cancer types. And it's one that you'd like to try because you've heard other people, melanoma and lung are the big ones that are having big success now, and you think, well, I've got a different sort of cancer. I wonder if that would work for me. Is it fair in a society such as ours that those who can afford to pay get access to those drugs and those who can't afford don't get access? So the experimental drugs may be being sought as a last resort. Families are saying, we've got to try everything. Nothing's working. Let's try these drugs. So is it responsible to consider spending large amounts of savings or your superannuation on unproven therapies? And we've seen regularly people who have terminal illness and who can claim their superannuation under the terminal illness provisions who spend a lot of money on unproven treatments and who die leaving families still with a huge mortgage and having missed perhaps the opportunity to provide education funds for their children or an investment for their remaining spouse. It's an ethical dilemma that really only individuals can solve for themselves. Mm. Income reduction is the most likely source of financial distress. So when the person with cancer, and let's not forget the carer, because often the change to work arrangements affects the carer as much as or more than the person with cancer. So if either of those people cease or reduce employment, if their income is restricted, we know that household expenses aren't restricted and in fact sometimes increase. There are higher costs sometimes when you're trying to get through a period of treatment. Most of us, including me, have a budget that's predicated on incomes from employment, and you might not have much in reserve, so you're going along quite nicely and managing what you have. But you might also be a household that's already running at a high level of debt, and it's impossible to service that debt if one income disappears, and that's when my colleagues next to me are going to be very helpful to you. We see in Australia the increasing casualisation of the workforce, and we see as well reduction of penalty rates and things like that. So there is no buffer. If you don't have any paid leave, stopping work means you're stopping pay. If you have to reduce your hours or your carer has to reduce their hours to accommodate treatment, you may lose penalty shifts. and you may be using that to supplement your low income base. We had treated a woman recently at Westmead who was, they were a young couple. She was working casually and had to stop work while she had her 6 weeks of chemotherapy and radiation. So that was difficult. Her husband, however, worked as a forklift driver in a factory, and he was working permanent evenings so that he could boost his wage. He then had to stop doing that, had a sympathetic boss who was happy to put him back onto a day shift arrangement, but because he needed to take their child to school while his wife had treatment. So in that family, although they were going along quite nicely before the cancer, we now had a woman who had more than 6 weeks without any pay at all, and her husband who'd lost his penalty rates. We also know that the incidence of most cancers increases with age. So older, and by that we probably mean over about 50, hardly old at all really, older patients who cease work will encounter difficulties in finding new employment. If you've had to give up work because your employer couldn't keep your job open for you, then you might find yourself in bother when you're trying to find new work. And many of you will relate to this. After you've finished quite extensive treatment, your capacity to work full-time may be reduced due to your ongoing fatigue and side effects, and that also results in a lower income and sometimes a decision to cease work well before you would have otherwise chosen to. So how do we address financial distress? Because it happens to more people than you'd think. So financial toxicity should be viewed now as an adverse effect of treatment. Do you, as individuals, think that the clinicians who are looking after you know about your financial concerns? Did they discuss your financial concerns with you? Are you comfortable telling them about your worries? It's quite embarrassing to admit that you might not be able to get your prescriptions filled because you can't afford them this week. But if your treatment team doesn't know what's happening for you, then they can't help you. They can't know that you might need to have some additional financial assistance help directed your way. They can't know that you might need to be referred to the Cancer Council services. But the onus is also on us as clinicians. We need to be providing information and starting conversations about the cost implications of treatment. We do that about all the other things. If you go and you're commencing some sort of regimen of cancer treatment, it might be chemotherapy or surgery or radiotherapy, then you get a whole lot of information about side effects and what you might expect. But I would bet most of you haven't had a discussion about what the financial side effects can be. So you need timely access to financial advice and assistance before you're in trouble. You need to be going off to these services before you've got the bailiff knocking at your door. Sure.
Sorry.
So what can you do? We've been through quite extensively, and you'll be able to recap that when you get the recording. The Centrelink payments such as New Start, sickness allowance, disability support, carer payment and carer allowance. You can talk to your financial institutions about arrangements for renegotiating payments. They're required by law to do that, but they might not always tell you about that, and you might need to engage Lynette and her colleagues' service to make that happen. And there is access to superannuation insurance for financial hardship or for terminal illness, but think carefully about that, because not so much the terminal illness, but if your cancer is well treated and there's a plan to return to work, then you're wanting to be keeping your superannuation and insurance for future need. So it's not an easy decision. It needs expert advice.
Big decision.
So,
thank you, Kim. That was great. We have some questions up here. We have a lot of other questions that were asked when people registered. We obviously can't answer them all because there was quite a lot, but we've sort of picked out a few, and there's a few questions you've asked tonight as well that we'll try and address. So we might start with the first one that's up on the screen. So is there free, unbiased financial advice available? I think we've probably already addressed that question tonight in what we've talked about. As Lynn talked about at Cancer Council, we offer a free service of financial counselling. And again, the difference, I think, between financial advice or financial advisor and financial counselling is generally when you're in financial crisis and you haven't got much money. There's financial advisors when you've got money and super and stuff and you need advice on what to do with it. Correct?
Probably all areas of
in a nutshell
really,
kind of thing.
People
But I
sort of need it throughout life. But
of course.
yeah, I mean, obviously, generally speaking, we're there as normally on a paid basis, but obviously through the program.
Yeah. So we have just to clarify, I guess, we have a pro bono program at Cancer Counsellor, which is national. So wherever you are in Australia, if there's anyone logged on tonight that's not from New South Wales, the pro bono, it's a legal and financial advice program where we actually kind of act like a broker, where we link you up with a lawyer or financial advisor in your town, and they do the work for you for free. So again, it's assessed, and there's certain criteria you need to meet of, maybe not having the financial means to pay. And if you do have a little bit of money, maybe you might pay a small fee sometimes. I think sometimes that might happen.
And can I just add too, with financial counselling, they're professionally trained, so they approach with a non-judgmental and respectful attitude, also empathy, and they're great listeners. They listen to the story.
Speaking about yourself, because you're a financial counsellor. Right?
Or financial counsellors throughout New South Wales and Australia.
Yeah,
they're all trained to a high level, and they show empathy, and I think that they really listen to the story. They hear your story, because those stories are individual. Yeah. Everyone has their own journey.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would add to that, don't be frightened to say, I'm heading into trouble here, and say it before you're really in trouble, because you won't be the first and you won't be the last. And it's an embarrassing topic to bring up, but social workers and financial counsellors are here to direct you so that your quality of life is maintained and your worry levels are reduced.
I think also with financial advisors, probably the best work we do are with people who have difficulty rather than people who've got their money. I think that's probably certainly true of many advisors, that we're actually there thinking we're helping. That's what we want to do. So when things are difficult is probably when we help the most, rather than managing money, which is part of the job, but not the job.
And I think, Kim, a question to you about accessing, so like what you were just saying about people, I guess, having the courage to say, look, I know I'm heading into financial trouble. Do you find with a lot of people that you see that they may not admit it and talk about it until it's at a crisis point? Is that common?
It's very common, and so you need to approach it sensitively, so it's not a conversation you have in the waiting room of the clinic with lots of other ears listening. It's not a conversation you have as you pass someone in a corridor. It's part of an assessment of generally how, overall, how's it all going with this treatment, including, what are the financial implications? Are you able to work? Is the person who cares for you able to work? What are the extra expenses you've had? And sometimes it's that more less sensitive conversation that will get them to say, well, actually, we've had some reminders for bills lately, and I'm a bit worried. I've got another 6 months of treatment ahead of me. I'm a bit worried about how that's going to go.
Yeah. And what about, you work at Westmead and there's other social workers there, and I know there are some hospitals and treatment centres that people might be, especially out in rural regional areas where there isn't a social worker. So who should they talk to at the treatment centre in those cases?
So most places now have a care coordinator, so usually they're nurses. All of the regional centres have access to somebody in psycho-oncology, so they're a social worker or psychologist. They may not be full-time, they may not be on site. And if all else fails, well, of course, you're in 13, 11, 20.
Yes, that's right. A question came up earlier, actually, Sue, from Trish, saying how many financial advisors at Hill Ross are involved in the pro bono service?
That would probably be an answer that you could give more readily than
I don't know.
No? AMP and Hill Ross is owned by AMP, but Hill Ross is a separate licensee. They do actively support the Cancer Counsel program, and the way that they support it is that as an advisor I give my time, I do the research and present the advice, and my team will implement it, but the actual plan that we everything we do we present in a personal advice document, which is about 60 pages normally, and that is formatted by a paraplanner, and AMP pay for that paraplanner. So we don't have to pay, we don't actually lose money on the whole business. And to give you an example, to give you an example, a plan would cost about $600 through paraplanning if there's a few different components of it. So my time is given by me and the practice I work for, but AMP are big advocates when it comes to the Cancer Counsellor. They support us from the paraplanning side of things, but I'm afraid I don't actually know how many Hill Ross advisors are part of it.
But, and apart from Hill Ross, there are a lot of other financial advisors all across Australia. So there's quite a number. I don't know the exact number though. And there's been a few questions about if I'm in North Coast, Foster and New England, Narrabri. And the best advice I would give you is you either, as we said, speak to your social worker or nurse care coordinator or psychologist, or if none of them are there, ring 13 11 20 and talk to us there, and then you'll get referred down to maybe Lynn or someone in the pro bono team, and then they will talk you through what your options are and how we can help you. So,
and I think just a general note for people who aren't going to qualify for the pro bono program, the patients that I see in that situation generally find they get good help from their superannuation fund. So they can ring their fund and ask for their financial planner, and that's been a satisfactory way to approach the problem as well.
That's good. That's another avenue, I guess. So again, how to navigate obtaining income protection insurance, and I'm not sure whether the person that asked this question has already had their cancer diagnosis. So does that affect obtaining the insurance, I'm presuming?
It does. With obtaining insurance after cancer, normally they expect to, the insurer will look for a period of time where you've been cancer-free. Some insurers will consider insurance for people that have survived cancer. It does depend on the type of cancer, the degree of severity and how long you've been in remission. What I would recommend with any insurance always is to be very aware that some insurance, they will accept you over the phone from, say, TV advertising, for example, and it's not a contract, if you like. So the insurance, they will take the premiums, and if you then need to claim, they will do what's called the underwriting process at that time. And if they decide that you aren't covered because of a pre-existing condition, they won't pay out the cover. So it's really important with insurance, whichever avenue you go through, that you take the time to go through the underwriting process, because some insurers may say, well, yes, we'll cover you, but we won't cover you for breast cancer specifically. So they may cover you for 101 other things, but they don't cover you for that. But at least you know that, you know what you're paying for, and you know whether or not you're going to be covered at time of claim. Unfortunately, the reason why a lot of insurance companies get a very bad name for paying out insurance is due to the fact that much of it is taken out in 5 minutes, yes, you're covered, and actually a proper insurance cover is a contract with the insurer, and once they take that contract with you, you are covered for everything except if they say something isn't covered, which may or may not be the case depending on the
and there's just a related issue to that that's coming up more and more now as we know more about the genetics of cancer. And so some of you will be in a situation where some cancers end up having you referred to a familial cancer service, and you may be found to have a genetic mutation, and that opens up some options for your family members to have testing and some screening and so on. And if family members who haven't already had cancer are thinking about doing that, and that's a good thing to do because they can be really proactive in controlling their own health, they should get their insurance sorted before they ever have a test. So that's just another thing to think about. Most familial cancer services will tell you that anyway, but once you have the test, if you have a genetic mutation, it doesn't of course mean you're going to get cancer. It means that your risk is higher. But if you haven't had the test before you take out your insurance, then your insurance should be okay.
We're coming up to finishing. Just one quick question Ruth had, and it's about Centrelink. And I guess the next question's about entitlements. sort of reflect back on the Centrelink that we've already touched upon, and returning to work. When we email you the recording, we'll have resources, and we've done some webinars on returning to work. So we'll send you the link to that as well, and you can have a look at that webinar, which will go through all these questions that are here, because we did have quite a few queries about returning to work, and we've got some books as well. So we'll give you the links to all of those and the resources we send. But Ruth was asking about how do you get a phone appointment with Centrelink. I don't know if that's an easy answer or...
I put the number up on the
screen.
slide.
So we'll put that in the resources.
Yes, so that number, if you ring that number, it takes you through to that specific area of Centrelink rather than going through the call centre in many hours. And you actually book an appointment with them, whether it's by phone or in person.
All right. So that'll be, you'll get a copy of the slides as well, so you can go through all the slides and see all that. Plus, we'll put it in the resources, as I said. So I think that's about it, unless anyone's got any more burning questions or you ladies have got anything else you'd like to add at all. But I think it's been very informative, and thank you all very much. And again, that number 13 11 20. So if you've got any queries that come up tomorrow that you want to find out about, please do call and ask. Lots of experienced people that man those phones. We also have an online community, which is a new revamped place where you can go and blog. An online community, which is a new revamped place where you can go and blog and chat to other people. So take a look at that, because that's somewhere you can go, you know, in the middle of the night if you can't sleep and you want to chat with someone. Often there might be someone else on there that you can share your thoughts with. And again, Lifeline 13 11 14, if anything's come up for you tonight that you'd like to chat with someone. So thank you all very much. And exit survey. I always forget the exit survey. So when we finish, an exit survey will pop up. It's only very, very short, and it helps us inform us what we need to be doing with these webinars, and just gives you a chance to give us a little bit of feedback. So really appreciate if you could take the time to do the survey. And thank you all again to the panel for coming along tonight. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.